Well, hi there. Have you gotten enough of the college football playoff takes yet? If so, sorry, we're gonna give you some more here. It's the first day that the portal is officially open as well, and that's going to be a hot topic for the next month or
Oh, yeah.
more. He is Zach Blackerby. I'm Brad Law. Thanks very much for tuning in to Village Vice. And Zach, you're on the road, aren't you? You are not in your normal place.
No, I'm up in Nashville covering the winter meetings, MLB winter meetings for one of my website, bravestoday.com. So, yeah, I'm paying attention more to the portal than I am actually what's happening here. So,
Well, you have other guys for that. You have the meat and potatoes. You have guys for that.
yeah, shout out to Lindsey Crosby, who's holding down the fort.
All right. So everybody else has chimed in on the playoff. I was not surprised that it played out the way it did, but I did not think the committee got it right. And I think there are some objective reasons why, but I think we disagree on the things that I think are objective, which sort of fuels my whole point on this, in that there is no real objective criteria. And that lands us in the real sloppy place that we're in. But I thought the committee got it wrong.
The committee put themselves in an unfortunate situation when they said, hey, Jordan Travis's injury is a big part of this, but when he got injured, they still moved FSU up and kept them in that top four. So if you were never going to take them regardless, or if you were going to take a potential one-loss team ahead of them as soon as their quarterback went down, why didn't you move them down in the rankings then? I think that's the biggest issue. I think if they would have done that, there would have been outbreak. There would have been a lot of people upset when that happened, but it wouldn't have been anywhere near what as bad as it, because at least you can kind of point to some level of consistency like you're hinting at, Brad. The thing that's driven me the most crazy in all of this is I think there are very clear arguments for Alabama and very clear arguments for FSU to be that fourth team in the CFP. The thing that's driving me most crazy about all this, Brad, are the people that have the people that are pro FSU that can't see where the Alabama side is coming from. Yeah. That's what drives me crazy, because it's like, okay, you're not interested in the conversation. You just want to be mad at something.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point, and I want to add that to this discussion, right? You're watching a show called Village Vice, and a lot of you are Alabama people or Georgia people or what have you, and you're going to go, well, you're biased, and that's all it is. So if that's your only, if you're going to stop at that outlook, and if you're not capable of critical thinking, or if you don't want to think critically about the discussion, not that it matters, right? You're not changing the rankings at this point, but if you're not interested or capable of critically thinking, just, man, like in your suggestions bar right now, there's a million other videos you can watch. That's fine. We get it, but we appreciate the ability to think critically and not automatically say, well, you're just biased and you're not. I think we have to be able to think critically about this conversation, because I think there are valid points on each side. We're NFLing college football every way possible, right? The NFLization of college football is all around us, except in the model in which we choose our national champion or our playoff contenders. Sure. If the Patriots, Zach, finish their season one game ahead of the Dolphins, not this year, but in a normal year.
Thanks, Brad.
If they finish one game ahead, but they lose their starting quarterback, again, not this year, because you'd like that actually this year, but in a normal year.
After yesterday, I don't know if that's true.
That's fair. Yeah. But they lose their starting quarterback 3 games before the end of the regular season and win all 3 of those games.
Sure.
And a selection committee still said, now the Dolphins are a better team. They're going to go to the playoffs.
It's brutal.
That's absurd. It's not only brutal, it's absurd. It's laughable, but it's completely acceptable in college football.
Yeah. And I want to state that I think the committee put the best 4 teams in, if that's the criteria, but we don't know what the criteria is.
Yeah.
Is it the 4 most deserving teams? I think there's several SEC teams that could have done what FSU did. I think if you put LSU in the ACC, I think they're undefeated. But you can't prove that.
Not losing Jaden Daniels, not if they lost their starting quarterback.
Maybe that's true. We don't know, right? I mean, there's only so much you can say, and that's why we're playing this game. But I mean, you can look at the Pac-12, right? Like Oregon, sure. I think Oregon's better than FSU, especially now without their quarterback. But Doesn't matter. You can say the same thing about Ohio State. Like it doesn't matter. And so once again, it's the goalpost. It's the goalpost. And I think something that the committee was afraid of is the fact that, and something that Nick Saban said after they won the SEC championship game over Georgia, where it's like, well, why did we schedule Texas then? Like, why did we even do that? Because they could have beaten, some other team instead of that loss to Texas. And you and I've made this joke before, Brad. We've made the joke before about how much the committee loves a quality loss. They love it. That's when they do their weekly CFP ranking reveal shows. They talk about, man, this team's got a quality loss. They love quality losses. And it's funny because I joke about that with a lot of my friends, and it's like, oh, wow, that actually came into play here somehow. So it's the goalpost. Do you give it to the most deserving team, or do you give them to the better team? And I don't know, because we've seen different things throughout the years.
And the problem is both of those terms are subjective terms. They're inherently subjective terms. What's the best food at any given restaurant? What's the best movie you've ever seen? What's the best anything? What's the best brand of shoe? What's the best anything? It's completely subjective. So you compile 13 people, and their best, any random 13 people, their best of anything is likely going to be different than another random group of 13 people's best of anything. And most deserving sounds a little less subjective, but you're still basing it on material or criteria that's not concrete.
Sure.
The committee does like a quality loss depending on the team that loses the game. And I think that matters too. Apparently, the committee valued a quality loss more than it valued quality wins. Nick Saban's the biggest double talker in the history of college football. Okay. After the SEC championship game, he made his case for his team and said it's about the full body of work. It's about the full body of work. Florida State's full body of work included taking LSU apart. They completely disassembled LSU week 1 of the season. Okay. If you take the full body of work, you have to include that. You also have to include winning 3 games with a backup quarterback and the other 21 players that are on the field, as opposed to just the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
If you're valuing the full body of work. I don't think the Alabama head coach actually meant full body of work for everybody. Now, he was making his case for his team, which is what you would expect him to do. I'm not faulting any coach for making the case for his team. But to use the line, you got to consider the full body of work. If you do that for every team and you have a power conference champion who goes undefeated, that team should be in. That team should be in. Let me ask you this. If Ole Miss had the same resume as Alabama, if Ole Miss went undefeated in the SEC, but had a quality loss at home to another conference champion.
Yeah, Ole Miss plays Washington for some reason and loses. Sure.
Yeah. Are they in?
No. No way.
Of course not.
No way.
Of course not. So what you have, all right, so ESPN has been telling, I'm just going to get everybody in this one rant. Sweet. ESPN has been telling us for the last 10 years with the way they market the playoff that the regular season doesn't matter. Like, that message has been clear because in August, who's in? The playoff is all that matters.
Sure.
Well, the committee kind of walked right in step with that messaging. They agreed that the playoff is all that matters because they delivered the message that the regular season really isn't all that important.
Yeah. Now, Brad, going back to your Ole Miss, like, would Ole Miss be in that situation? I don't think they would be, but I do think that they should be. I think if you win the SEC, you should be in the college football playoff. I said that and got a lot of slack Saturday night. The take ended up being correct on Sunday. I didn't expect it to be when I put that out. That's why I said it. But I think if you win the SEC, you should have a chance to play for the national championship game. And that's not a pick and choose thing. It's a policy. It's a policy, and it's just something that I believe about college football.
I agree with you if every conference champion gets an automatic bid, and which we're going to go
I
to a model that
understand,
goes that way.
and that's the biggest argument, and I totally I get that, but I don't think it matters. I
What
think
if,
if you win the SEC, you should be in the college football playoff.
all right, what if you have 4 losses?
I think you still do, honestly, but I think that's such a ridiculous thing where like that's not even a real conversation. But sure. If the SEC was so filled with parity for that season, and there were so many teams tied at the top where they all beat each other and the winner lost 4 times, that's such a ridiculous thing. But sure, I think so. I think a more realistic question is what if LSU has 2 losses like they did several years ago? What does that look like? And the answer to that would be yes. I think so.
Maybe a better example would be the 2010 SEC championship was 12-0 Auburn, 9-3 South Carolina. If you had a 4-team playoff and a 3-loss Carolina team that wasn't anywhere near the top 4 in the country, they were top 20, but not top 4. Had they won the game, that's a team that would have earned a spot in the playoff.
You get to wave the flag if you beat the top team in the country and the eventual Heisman winner, maybe, sure. But once again, like South Carolina wasn't even in that game. I get it.
Right.
I get it. No, it's a policy, though. You're not going to make me budge off of this. If you win the SEC, you deserve a spot in the college football playoff. Yes,
I understand. And I understand that we're going to 12 teams and that there are some automatic qualifying protocols.
Which isn't that great? I mean, the fact that like this stinks for FSU, I hurt for them. Like, I totally get it. But like, it is nice that we're all having this debate and it ultimately is going to get fixed next year. Like that is good.
Yeah, and your subjective pieces will be who got left out at 13 versus 12. And if you think it's going to lessen, by the way, the outrage for a team that doesn't get in at 12 as opposed to who doesn't get in at 4, it's not. It's going to heighten it because now instead of 1 or 2 teams that are going to make their case, you're going to have 5, 6, or 7 teams that are going to say we should have been 10, 11, 12. So you're going to have 8 or 9 teams that are making the case for the last 3 spots as opposed to 2 teams.
Well, I also think we're cherry picking information here to some extent because until this year, Brad, and once again, like the FSU case is very, very strong. I'm not pushing against it at all. But this is the first year where I feel like the 4 teams are actually worthy of the playoff. I mean, usually it's 1 or 2 and it's like, okay, well, this team, they look good the last 6 weeks or whatever, they won their conference, whatever. They're like, okay, so they backfill 3 and 4. Yeah. Or sometimes there's 3 teams like last year and the 4th team is like, okay, sure, you can come play for a championship. Yeah. This is the first time where I think we've actually had 5 teams that were worthy of it.
I agree.
And I don't know if that's going to happen. How often is that going to happen? Is this a product of NIL? Yeah. Is this a product of more guys staying in school longer and the level of quarterback play being, raised all throughout college football? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So like there's a chance that this is totally an exception and there's still consistently going to be 2 or 3 teams that are just better than everybody else. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And again, if you have subjective criteria, then you give yourself the wiggle room to ask, well, are we looking for the 3 best games total? Are we looking at the 4 most competitive or the 4 most competitive teams, the 3 most competitive games?
Yeah.
What are we trying to achieve with this? I thought it made a lot of sense Sunday morning to wake up and say, all right, you have 3 undefeated conference champions. You have 2 other 1-loss conference champions. They happen to play. The winner of that gets your 4th spot. Like, if you ask the question, if you leave Florida State out and you say, well, what else could they have done? Literally nothing. They couldn't have done anything else except maybe lie about the quarterback's injury status. They could have done that. If you left Alabama out and asked the question, well, what more could they have done? You had an answer. Well, they could have beaten Texas at home. Mm-hmm. Like, you have an answer for that. Totally. There is no answer for what else could Florida State. Again, I just thought it came down to you got 3 undefeated conference champs. You have 2 other conference champs who played each other. You take the winner head to head. This is easy. Everybody goes home, and it's just the way it is. And that's not to. Obviously, I love the SEC. Mm-hmm. This is not an Alabama, Georgia, anti-bias type thing.
Sure.
This is, believe that or not, but it is this. I just thought that was the most objective way for a non-partial national committee to look at this, and thought they didn't. So
yeah,
and,
no, it's different. It's a different take for sure, because it's a different situation. We've just never really, we've never really seen this before. And I think Saturday was the worst case scenario for the committee. I don't think there's any question about it. I'm sure they were all like, oh my gosh, Alabama actually did this. How are we going to pull this off? And they didn't pull it off, right? They didn't pull it off. Because I agree with everybody that says Alabama should not be in. I totally get it. But just to circle back, like I believe if you win the SEC, you should be in the college football playoff. And that'll be the case for forever moving forward with these automatic qualifiers, right?
Right.
So
that's it. And that's, I kind of, here's a truth that nobody can do anything about, because this is the nature of this business, and we're all involved in the talking business.
Yeah.
People will talk about this for about another month, and then they'll play the games. And as it always is, once the games start, conversation's gone. It's over. It's flushed down the garbage disposal forever. Outside of Tallahassee, they'll talk about it just like we still talk about 2004.
As they should. And look, if I'm FSU, I have the conversation about leaving the ACC. I think their conference failed them, Brad. And I know we're going to put all the blame on the college football playoff committee, and that's fine. You can do whatever you can. But the bottom line is the ACC from top to bottom was not good enough. Yeah. Like, this shouldn't have been a conversation. But the fact that it was, because the ACC is so bad. It's so bad. And Clemson carried them for a long time. And now that the Dabo refuses to adapt to the modern day college football with NIL and the portal, I mean, they're just not going to do that anymore. And so, is that something that FSU wants to do? That's going to be something, because they're going to get the worst seed, right? I mean, moving forward, when the 5 automatic qualifiers roll in, they're going to get the worst seed, and they're going to get bad matchups, and it's not going to help them. So we'll see. Hey, today's show brought to you by our friends at MyBookie.ag. If you found $100 on the ground, Brad, you'd be like, this is great. This is great. Well, MyBookie, they're going to take care of you. Go to MyBookie.ag, use promo code NEXTROUND, and it feels a little different than finding $100 or extra money, free money on the floor, but you'll find it in your account when you use promo code NEXTROUND. It'll just pop up. You'll see it, and you'll be like, wow, I've already made money at MyBookie.ag. So bowl season is right upon us, Brad, which is very, very exciting, as well as a million other things happening this time of year in sports. So head over to MyBookie.ag and get in on the action. You want to go ahead and give some love to our other friend, our other sponsor of the show, since we
want to go ahead and talk about Manscaped?
Yeah, we talked too long.
Oh, I don't know. That, I got to tell you, that was about the fastest 18 minutes I can remember in the history of this show. But I do want to talk about Manscaped, because right now when you go to manscaped.com, and you know the promo code if you've watched us at all, VICE, VICE, you're going to get 20% off and free shipping. And guys, if you haven't thought about the ultimate bundle this Christmas season, then you need the Lawnmower 5.0 Performance Package. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is, of course, the ultimate bundle for the man who deserves it all, and that's you. Or for the ladies watching, it's your man. He deserves it all. So get the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose trimmer, Manscaped's liquid formulations, plus 2 free gifts. So those 2 free gifts, by the way, include the Boxers 2.0. They're seriously, they're the best boxers that I have ever worn, and you will say the same. Get the Performance Package at manscaped.com. Use the promo code VICE. Get 20% off plus free shipping just for watching Village Vice.
Yes, absolutely love our friends at Manscaped. Let's talk about the portal just for a few seconds here. I'm a little surprised that Steven Sings, the Auburn Jack linebacker, I'm surprised he entered the portal. In fact, on the show, on my Locked On Auburn show that I put up on Monday, I talked about how, like, I didn't think he would transfer because Auburn needed him so much, because there's just not a whole lot of bodies that can play Jack linebacker on this roster. But Clearly, he thought, unless Auburn asked him to leave, but I don't think that makes sense unless they've got a bunch of guys just lined up ready to come play Jack at Auburn, which might be the case. We'll see over the next few weeks if that happens or not. But I'm surprised. I thought he would be a solid backup piece, a solid depth piece on this defense, but maybe that's not what he wants.
I think it said a lot that he followed his coaching staff, because his position coach and his head coach both came over from Liberty,
Sure.
and he came with them.
Right.
And so the fact that he followed them to Auburn, I don't know this, but the fact that he is entering the portal, I don't think that's like, you think about relationships between coaches and players, and it makes sense to me that they would have had an honest conversation perhaps with him, saying, we plan to bring in some guys that may make it difficult for you to see the field more than you did last year. So for you to play like that, because these are two-way conversations and they're sometimes encouraged decisions. So keep that in mind as you see these portal announcements. Not all of them are, but some of them are. That's one that makes sense to me if you told me it went that way.
Yeah, I just thought with Elijah McAllister running out of eligibility, and you do everything you can to bring back McLeod, which I do think the fact that they let him leave makes me feel a little bit better about McLeod. I mean, you need 2 or 3 of these guys.
Yeah.
And so can Auburn go out and find 2 more guys that are better than Steven Sings? Or do they feel good about Joseph Phillips and Jamonta Waller as true freshmen? Yeah. I think all of these are conversations that we'll get to have over the next few months.
Well, you look at net gain, net loss in the room. And last year, bringing in McAllister and McLeod and Sings, right? So if McLeod is back, do you add 2 more guys either via your true freshman class or the portal that net you a positive in the long run? I do. I think they probably have eyes on a couple of transfer edge, jack linebackers that just like they did last year where they brought in 3. I think you might see 2 or 3 again this year. That's kind of my expectation.
Yeah, and if my memory serves correctly, they lost more last year than they gained because Derek Hall, Ekuliota both went to the league, and then Marcus Bragg ran out of eligibility, and then who was the guy that went to Kansas? Brooks?
Yes.
Small guy. He had a hard time putting weight on. Yeah, Dylan Brooks. That's right. Yeah, he so I don't know. They totally changed that room, and it's going to look pretty different again, with the exception of McAllister. So we'll see. I think they need to get 2 more guys at that position, or maybe kind of get a tweener, a guy that can maybe be a backup jack or a pass rush stand-up end or something like that. So those guys will be out there, but I don't know. Auburn had a hard time landing a few of those guys a year ago. They called several of them, and they eventually got lucky with McLeod. But we'll see. We'll see how active they are. But that surprised me just because of the scarcity of bodies that have played college football in that room. So we'll see. Other than that, it's been a bunch of receivers, Brad, that have entered the portal.
Yeah, Jair Shorter, Malcolm Johnson Jr., Amari Kelly did it a little before the official window opened. And I don't think that's a surprise either. That's a lot of bodies in that room, even with the guys who are out of eligibility. And we talked about it on another show. Just so many bodies and so much talent coming in. And not a surprise where a receiver thinks I could go somewhere else and maybe get more opportunities there. So it wouldn't surprise me to see others add to the list, but it's not shocking at all to see the names that have already.
Some big name quarterbacks have entered the portal. And in fact, the more time that goes by, the more I'm like, do we even want a quarterback? I don't know. It's early. We've got a long way to go. But I do think that's a conversation we need to have in a week if there's not a whole lot of smoke around one specific guy. But any big name quarterbacks that are kind of intriguing to you, Brad?
It's interesting that the Vandergrift kid from Georgia is going to transfer.
Sure.
There was one yesterday, and the name totally escapes me, so that doesn't really add very much to the discussion.
Hey, that's okay.
But that's intriguing. Again, I think Auburn feels pretty good about where it is in the starting quarterback position. The question is going to be, do you want to bring in somebody for competition's sake? I don't think you bring in somebody and you go, you're guaranteed to start if you come in. I don't think there's a guy out there in the portal that fits that bill. I think it's all a matter of depth in the room and quality, team elevating competition.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel entering the portal from Oklahoma. That's an interesting one.
But
as soon as as soon as he entered the portal, everybody's like, well, he's going to Oregon. So I don't even know if that's a real conversation. Seems like that's a dead set thing, but we'll see. Kyle McCord from Ohio State entering the portal. That's an interesting one. I'm not totally sold that he's better than what we've got and what we've got coming in, but we'll see. And then a guy that I've seen some Auburn smoke around his name, and that is Dante Moore, UCLA's quarterback, which his skill set, I'm looking forward to a few years from now when we have a better idea what Hugh Freeze wants at a quarterback, because it seems like all these guys that he's talked to, they're all different. They're all different type quarterbacks. Dante Moore, very different style than what Peyton Thorne is. But then again, like Peyton Thorne was a lot more mobile than we realized throughout the year last year. But I saw on a few message boards from folks that I really respect their opinion, and they wouldn't say stuff unless they were told to. But it sounds like Auburn and Dante Moore have had mutually interested conversations. So that's a name that I'm looking at too.
Yeah, his stats are not all that. I mean, they're not going to blow you away. What he did his freshman season, 6'3", 210. In there, when he threw it the most, that's when the numbers are less impressive. 3 interceptions against Oregon State. But again, as with all of these guys, as with the guys who are currently on the team, quarterback, and it goes back to the beginning of the show, why I have such a problem with the Jordan Travis injury being the reason that they're out.
Sure.
The quarterback alone can't shoulder all of the glory or all of the burden. Just can't. So you have to take quarterback stats in perspective with the context that's there.
And I think we're going to see that a lot if Peyton Thorne is the guy next year. I think with a different receiving room, I think he will look way better. And a lot of people will eat a lot of what they're saying about Peyton Thorne right now. They'll be eating those words. So, Brad, I think that about does it for today's show, my friend.
It does. Appreciate everybody watching. Certainly remember, everyone has vices. Make sure Village Vice is one of yours.